Lonely Monk Productions. I don't know if y'all have read Mood Music by Liz Pelly yet, but yo,
that's my joy!
Hey, yo, displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. You're tasting things that don't need to be measured. You ain't being judged. You won't. What's good, friends and family, neighbors near and far? Welcome to an all-new episode of the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast. The podcast, website, brand, movement, way of life dedicated to the embrace and championing of your passions. I'm your host, Nate Runkle, a.k.a. Didn't you used to host a podcast where you interview creatives? A.k.a. Yes, I did. A.k.a. This is it. A.k.a. Nate 3.0. Back at it again with yet another episode of the podcast. As always, I hope this podcast finds you all in good health and in good spirits. On today's episode, I chat with Kevin Hanson of the band The Fractals and Huffamoose and so much more. You know, the Fractals just dropped a new EP called Rescue, and we talk about that and a bunch more coming up in a minute here. But first, what is up, my friends? I am back in action, gaining some traction and fishing for a reaction from you. How goes it? All right, so I took a break. I meant it to be like a week or two, and it turned into what? I don't know, a month or two. I'm sorry. Things have been silly on the life front, but here we are. We're back, and we're ready to share some chats with you. And today's is a great one. I had a blast chatting with Kevin about his life in music, and we're going to get to that. But let me just touch on some upcoming happenings here before we do. First, if you hear this before Thursday, June 19th, I am performing live at Fringe Arts for the Risk live show here in Philly. This is my third appearance on Risk. The first time I told the story about finding out at 46 through 23andMe that my dad was not my biological father. The second time I talked about my first kiss and how a night of teenage curiosity ended with me staring down the barrel of a shotgun. And this time, I'm getting up to talk about an early viral moment I had in the early days of the internet and how I ended up in Maureen Dowd's book, Are Men Necessary? Spoiler alert, she doesn't think I'm necessary. Show starts at 7:30 and tickets are still available. So head on over to risk-show.com/live to pick those up. Next, this Saturday, June 21st, I am playing an acoustic show at Hares Hill Brewery in Pottstown from 7 to 10 p.m. Come on out and spend an evening with me covering everything from the Doobie Brothers to Chapel Roan. Then, not the next day, but the following Sunday, June 29th, me and my season 1 guest and one of my best buds in this whole world, Scott Miller, will be back on the patio at Tex-Mex Connection in North Wales from 4 to 7 p.m., doing what we have done there for over 20 years, which now that I say that out loud is a crazy amount of time. Of course, follow us on the socials at Yo That's My Jawn. Hit the website up, yothat'smyjawn.com. Like, rate, review, share, subscribe, pledge allegiance, do all that stuff. But I hope to see you out at one of these upcoming events. Anyway, let's get into it. My guest today is a singer, guitarist, and songwriter who has recorded and performed with Usher, Jay-Z, The Roots, Musiq Soulchild, and more. And he appears in the films Fade to Black and Dave Chappelle's Block Party. His band Huffamoose signed with Interscope Records in the 90s and toured extensively while charting on Billboard's alternative rock charts and graced the stages of Woodstock 94 and Late Night with Conan O'Brien. Alongside some of the members of Huffamoose, his latest band is The Fractals, who just released their latest EP, Rescue, on May 30th. Folks, it is my honor to welcome to the show, Kevin Hanson. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined today by the great Kevin Hanson. Kevin, thank you for joining me on Yo, That's My Jawn.
Thank you so much for having me. It's psyched to be here.
So I always like to tell people a little connection that I have with them and their music and whatnot. And for you, an old coworker and good friend of mine, Bob, was an enormous fan of Huffamoose. And sadly, he passed away last year. But I do know in my heart that he is super excited that I am getting to talk to you. And I'm super excited to be able to talk to you because I've dug your stuff for a very long time. So
Thank you so much.
I'm so glad to have you on here. I always like to start things off in the Wayback Machine. Tell me a little bit about yourself growing up. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Spokane, Washington. and
Okay.
started playing music at a pretty young age. And I got a guitar. I played trumpet first, and then got a guitar when I was 10, and had a very musical household. My brother and sister are both musicians. My parents were lovers of music, and they graduated high school in 1969. So we kind of grew up in a party. But we constantly had music blasting. So that was my hometown, and I moved to Philly in the summer of '92.
Okay.
Yeah, I moved out here with my music teacher from college, actually from Bellingham, Washington. Chuck Israels is his name. He took a job teaching at Temple University for a year, so I made us move out here with he and his family.
Oh, very cool. Were you guys working together or?
Well, it was very much a mentorship. He was my teacher. I kind of went to that school in Washington State to study with him, so he became my kind of full-time teacher for that entire year, and then the year that we were in Philly as well.
We when you picked up the guitar, like you said you started on trumpet. Did guitar come easily to you, or were you slow to it?
No, it did. It came pretty quickly to me. I think mostly because I was obsessed with playing guitar, and I had guitar heroes before I got a guitar, and so it was just something like I played all the time when I was a kid,
Yeah.
and kind of developed pretty quickly, I think, as a guitar player.
I get it because like when I first started, I was writing songs before I could play songs, and I was just like, man, I just hope that someday I'll be able to figure out how to do this. Can you remember the first song you could play on guitar?
Yeah, I do, because my cousin Joe Hanson taught me how to play the riff to Crazy Train before I had a guitar.
Nice.
That would be the very first song that I played, and it. When I was 10 years old, my brother, who's a year older, we were listening to, a lot of rap and a lot of like Van Halen, Iron Maiden. So a lot of those guitar riffs were just ready to go because I knew them internally. So then it was just a matter of getting the technique together to pull them off.
Yeah. Were you in any high school bands or anything like that?
I didn't play in rock bands. I played in jazz bands, like in all the school jazz bands. But I also was I was lucky that I was embraced by this jazz community in Spokane, and there were unbelievable musicians. And then I started playing with a professional big band, the Spokane Jazz Orchestra, when I was still fairly young, like 15. So that was my band experience. It was like small combo jazz and big band jazz concerts.
It's funny too because like you can definitely hear that influence in your playing still to this day. Like even in the Fractal stuff, like you can hear like there's chord structures and the melodic nature kind of your songwriting and whatnot that totally lends to you weren't out there doing three chords in the truth for for the formative years. You know what I mean?
Yes, definitely. A lot of that too comes from, my dad was both my parents were really into Stevie Wonder and Steely Dan and Joni Mitchell. So we, I grew up hearing those type of chord progressions that definitely leaned on jazz harmonies.
It's one of the things that like when people talk about how music isn't the same, and I look, I know that everything evolves and everything changes, and like I'm sure big band fans in the 70s were like nobody plays horns anymore, you know what I mean, like and stuff like that. But one of the things that I feel like is kind of the gutting of public school music education and stuff like that is kind of what is kind of, I don't want to say dumbed down songwriting because it's not dumbing down. Like people are still expressing themselves and they're still getting out what they need to get out. But like, I grew up with like, much like you were saying, like Steely Dan and stuff like that, just these people who were master technicians on their instruments and then also wrote really functionally great songs, like,
Yeah. That I think, to that point, the cutting of funds for music education, it definitely has an impact. I mean, I teach at a few colleges in Philly, and just like an overall awareness of just the basic principles of music that I think you and I were exposed to as, in grade school, it's just not there anymore, And so basic things like I remember, Every Good Boy Does Fine, reading basic music. Like, they started teaching that in like first grade.
Yeah.
And now, like, I ask all of my college students, like, did you guys have any sort of theoretical? And, when I started teaching at UArts in 2008, like, most of the kids would raise their hand. But now most kids are like, nothing. A lot of, like, no choir, no anything. So it definitely has an effect on, just think the overall musical awareness of a lot of younger musicians today.
Yeah. And like, a lot of self-taught, like a lot of, people who don't have like a mentor who, will just kind of pull them aside and say, hey, check this out. You know what I mean? Or try something outside of the box.
In a lot of, the more like pop traditions in rock, like I have students that started learning songs on YouTube when they were 10, and other students that started making beats when they were 10 or 11 years old. And they're incredible. Guitar players who are really good technically, and also, I think if you have a basic amount of like native feel, like for groove, and your ears can identify melodies and chord sequences without any education, you could still go really far, especially on rock guitar, because it's more of a folk tradition. Somebody showing, like, my cousin showing me how to play Crazy Train. And that's how that knowledge is passed on.
Yeah. I always think back to, there was this interview in, I want to say like Guitar Player or something like that, with Prince. And one of the things he was talking about, like, because they were asking him, like, what would you tell like an aspiring guitar player who wants to play like you or something like that. And one of the things he mentioned was that rock guitar players never really focus on learning rhythm. And that like, and that's something that like musically I've started to notice, like, especially like, local bands and stuff like that, you get the bigger bands and they're, a little more well-versed and whatnot. But like a lot of like young players, like, are some of the sickest, technical players I've ever seen, but they just don't have like that kind of, like living rhythm to it, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like it feels calculated almost.
Yeah. I think that a lot of that is as a result of, in the 1980s, like if you were a guitar player, you were going to learn how to shred. So there were so many of these wizards, and Yngwie Malmsteen and, Paul Gilbert and all these incredible technicians. And that became a model. It's like, if you're going to play electric guitar, you're going to be able to burn,
Yeah.
And I think that's changed a little bit. Like, I know a lot of young, brilliant rhythm guitar players, and now in R&B, from the early 90s with neo soul fusing with gospel guitar, contemporary gospel music, and that feel. There's so much overlap between R&B and the church music. And so there are, like, if you open Instagram, and you'll find 116-year-old who are ridiculous musicians, not just guitar players, drummers, and like, I love seeing like young kids absolutely tearing it up on these videos. But so I think there's an ebb and flow between, your role as a virtuosic speed demon, or someone that can like really carve in and lay into a note, and then there's this whole other side of it, of these really like natively funky guitar players, or in the church. Like so many of the R&B musicians that are out on the road now with touring bands, they've been playing together since they were 5 and 6 years old in the church, Yeah. And so there's that influence of like extreme groove oriented music, really soulful.
So, by the way, ADHD. That's why I mentioned tangents earlier, because I'll go all over the place, and then I'll come back.
I'm right there with you, baby.
Good, cool, high five. So you get out here in Philly in '92. Like, how quickly after that did Huffamoose come together?
Soon after that, I was here in '92, and then that next year, I got a phone call to do a gig with this guy Craig, who is a singer-songwriter. That's Craig Elkins. And I did a couple gigs with him, just like duo gigs. And at the same time, I had been playing with Eric Johnson, the drummer, and Jim Stigger, the bassist. And we had a group, and we were playing jazz. And we were just like, we didn't gig that often, but we got together all the time with a trumpet player named John Swana. After doing a couple gigs with Craig, we did a gig with a bass player and a drummer. And I said, hey, I've been playing with these guys. And those guys had known each other because they all went to Temple at not exactly the same time, but they all knew who each other were. So we played we played a gig together at Casa Mexicana in Manayunk, and then the second gig that we did, a manager came out and he saw us, and he immediately was like, "You guys are going to be the next Beatles," that kind of thing. But that was really it. It was like it was the second gig, and we all loved Craig's songwriting, and we all came from the same, kind of groove-based place for playing pop music. It was informed by a lot of Stevie Wonder, a lot of R&B music from the 80s and 70s and 80s. So it just seemed to gel really quickly. So Huffamoose got together in 92, I guess 90. Well, maybe it could have been in 92, 93, and then we were together for just a few months and recorded our first album. And just by dumb luck, one of the songs that Craig wrote called James garnered massive attention at WXPN, and then WXPN just blasted this song for like a year. And because of that, because of that exposure from WXPN, we started playing residencies at these old Philly bars like, Grape Street Pub, the North Star Bar. And it didn't take long to where we had a bit of a following in Philly. And then a year later, we won this. I was just telling the story yesterday. It's so funny. Like, we had been touring a little bit as a, first time tour. And our manager, we had a new manager at this point, and said, "Hey, you guys, you're going to go play this Battle of the Bands. And if you win, you can go to Woodstock. You'll play Woodstock 94. And we were all just so dismissive of it. It's like, it's sponsored by Pepsi. It sounds so jive. So we went and we played this thing. We played this gig, and he called us the next day to say, "Oh, you guys, you won that Battle of the Bands. So you're going to the next one." And we're like, "All right, whatever." So we played the next one, and then a week later he goes, "Oh," he's like, "Listen, you guys, you won that thing, so you're going to play one more." And we're like, "All right, fine, whatever." And we played it, and they told us, you won the competition. And they said, "So you're going to go play at Woodstock." And we were still thinking, "No, we're not. We're not playing Woodstock. We just played 3 bars in Philly, and now we're going to play." And then we did a gig. This was kind of crazy because we were on and off the road, and we played a gig at the Grape Street Pub, and then our manager showed up, and he said, "Listen, you're playing at Woodstock tomorrow, and you have to leave right now. Like, you're not going home. You're going to get on the road." So we drove up to Woodstock from Philly, and that's a whole story unto itself, playing Woodstock, which was just mind blowing. But that led to getting a lot more attention, and labels started calling, and then soon after that, we signed a record deal with Interscope Records, which at the time was, 9 Inch Nails, Rico Suave. We were not the kind of band that they would sign, but this A&R guy took a chance on us and thought that song James was going to really take off. So then we had a record deal, like after less than 2 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was nuts. And looking back on it, like when it was happening, we all had a healthy amount of Murphy's Law, even as a very young band, which served us well, because everything that can go wrong will go wrong. But the whole thing happened, and rather quickly, we were out in LA recording in '95, and then on the road. It took 2.5, 3 years to get the album released, but then we hit the road like heavily in '97, and then we were out for like 2 years straight, really working that album.
That's wild. You guys were a part of what I like. All right, so I always say it's my favorite time period in music, and I know that everybody thinks that whenever they graduated post that into college is the greatest time period for music. But for
Right.
me, it's a little bit more than just the music; it's also the industry itself, because I've always been very interested in kind of radio at that time period, because that was like the last throes of like radio making, being able to make and break. You mentioned WXPN, like they're one of the few that are still able to kind of get people out there and to kind of get a name out there. But the majority of radio stations, with corporate takeover and all, that's all gone. And the same thing with the record industry. Like the record industry at that time was taking chances on so many different things. Like you said, Interscope wasn't really known for like an indie rock band or anything like that, but they wanted one. You know what I mean? Like that was a time period where hey, we don't have one of these, we need one of these, and like, so I think that like musically a lot of really interesting stuff happened during that time that just could not have happened at any other point in time, because people were just literally throwing everything at the wall hoping something stuck.
I think you're absolutely right. It was also a time of, upheaval is a dramatic word, but in the late 80s, if you looked at what was really popular, like it was the burning embers of metal, and it was Paula Abdul. It was like, there was MC Hammer, Paula Abdul, Bon Jovi was still kicking it. And then the second that Nirvana, I think actually Alice in Chains may have been the first band to really get big, because they signed a big deal, I think with Capitol Records or something. And then it was grunge hit, and it changed everything. It was like kind of like this make believe punk rock ethos, just because the Hairspray was replaced with dirty hair,
Yeah.
and leather pants were replaced with thrift store jeans. But when that hit, it really changed everything, good and bad. It became, every band had to sound. You had to sound like Eddie Vedder for a second, or the guitar playing had to be very broad strokes. Step on your pedal now.
Yeah.
But it opened the door to, I think, a lot of indie bands. And this is before YouTube. It offered more experimentation, and I think people took more chances there for a short period of time. Before that, before grunge was so highly commoditized that that became the thing that you had to chase,
Right.
and you had to have this sound. And if it didn't sound remotely like any of these five bands, forget it. You know what I mean? That in the mainstream. But then there were all sorts of indie bands that popped up that were super creative, and there still are. There still are.
Sure.
Tons of music out there. It's just like you mentioned with radio, it's radio conglomerates. Everything is pre-programmed. The DJs don't have any say in it at the bigger stations. Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and like I got a bunch of friends who, like, I won't sell them out, who work for some of those stations and whatnot, and they're all miserable. Like they're all not happy, like, because they don't get to do what they signed up for, and even what they were hired for. Most of them, like, they're just kind of like just essentially like influencers that don't get to influence. You know what I mean? Like it's
that's
weird.
a good way to put it. Yeah, it changed so much, because when Huffamoose was on the road in the late 90s, radio still reigned supreme. And your entire tour, like, we were lucky because we had a record on a major label. We had a marketing and promotion budget. They paid for our touring for like the first year because we weren't making enough. I mean, and we could get, you can get a gig in any city if you got songs on the radio. And that just like flip-flopped so fast. And I have friends on the road now, brilliant musicians, killer bands, dedicated, who are like, their goal is to break even on their touring budgets, and it's like, they're not getting radio play. Even if they're getting big Spotify numbers, it doesn't have the same, like, one hand wash, what's the expression? Washes the other. So
that's right. Yeah.
yeah.
Now you got me second guessing it.
So the clubs aren't spending money to advertise their show on radio. Radio's, it's just changed so much.
Yeah, that's another thing that I was excited to have this conversation is because you've seen this change and you're kind of living this change. The Fractals have a new EP, Rescue, and so what's it like releasing in 2025 now? How was your release? Was it pleasant or?
Well, the release, we just had a release party last week at 118 North in Wayne, and it was great. It's always, it's scary because we're still, super, whatever you want to call it, indie or unsigned. But we have enough connections between us within the music community and some club owners that are very supportive. And we've got, we're not spring chickens, but we have older fans from the Huffamoose days and then newer fans. It's funny, the younger audience that we have they're all musicians because they're just into music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, the release was great, and we got help this time from our friend that Maggie Poulos, the publicist, who did a great job for us. And that's another, I don't want to say dirty little secret, but it's not really talked about much for even young jazz musicians who will release a record and then scratch their head 6 months later and say why isn't anybody listening to my music? And it's because nobody knows that it exists.
Yeah.
That's why it's where art meets commerce these days. I think especially you can do, a do-it-yourself campaign and all your social media and that stuff is important, but without a little bit of support and help, it's so challenging to get any traction.
Yeah, not to mention it takes you away from what you want to do, creating the art and playing the art and stuff like that. You don't want to I think about this with the podcast. I wish I had a team that could do all of the publishing or the getting the word out and stuff like that, so that I could just do this. If I could just have these conversations, even editing it and putting it together, that's the sweet spot for me. But then the selling it, I hate selling myself, and I should probably hire somebody, but whatever.
I think that afflicts so many. I'm terrible at self-promotion because it's uncomfortable. It's I do know some musicians and songwriters that they owe their success to their tenacity in saying, I'm going to get a song in this Disney movie. And I'm like, yeah, sure you are. And then a year later, it's how the hell did you do that? But, because if you're driven to do that, and better than anybody, that legwork takes as much, if not more time than creating the art itself. Yeah. So you need to get a team. You've got to have, one thing they kept saying at the label, and all these music business cliches that drove me crazy back in the day have all come true. And they kept saying we were signed to this big label, and they're well, how are you guys spreading the word? And we're how are you spreading the word? You're a multi-billion-dollar company. And they're no, you need to do it grassroots. You need a cheerleader. They kept saying that you need cheerleaders. And it's so true. You need people in your corner that genuinely, authentically like your music, Otherwise, it's anything that gets thrown out there, which might not be good at all, you're going to take a record company's word for it, or you know what I mean?
That's true. No, it's so true. It's I've been having this conversation a lot with friends and stuff like that, but it's the authenticity trap, it doesn't feel authentic if it's being blatantly sold to you. But if someone joyously likes something and sells it to you, then it's hey man, let me check that out. It's
exactly right.
one of the other things that I wanted to. So in those early days of Huffamoose and all, like you mentioned playing like the Grape and North Star, like which is just it warms my heart because I miss both those places now. But I think the Grape is supposed to come back. Actually, I heard, but they got held up on a liquor license issue, I think. But anyway, that was my home base when I was playing music out. Was the Grape, but like who else was around in the scene at that time when you guys started?
Well, there were a lot of bands just if we talked about the Grape Street Pub alone, on that side of things, there was a pretty successful band called June Rich. We did shows with Princes of Babylon, and we were friends with like the Low Road, Mike Brenner, Slow Mo. And then there was also like more of like the downtown scene. Like when I first moved here, the bands that were like Dandelion was huge in Philly. There were a lot more of the harder bands. But we definitely, we had a kinship with the scene, and there really was. Ironically, like when I got here in the early '90s, people would hate on the Philly scene, and I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, there's so many bands." And I was just talking with my friend Mike yesterday, Mike Brenner from Low Road, and we were talking about like in 1995 or '6, if you were on Second Street between Market and Walnut, there were 4 music venues or 5 within 2 blocks. There was the Khyber, there was the Tin Angel, there was Nick's upstairs at Nick's, there was the Middle East, and then there was right down the street was the Troc. So there were all these bands, and you would see your friends like getting out of their car, packing up gear, and like, "Yo, what's up?" And maybe that happens somewhere. I don't see it. A lot of the younger musicians that I know, it's all about house concerts.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Yeah, I feel like that. Like, there's a documentary to be made about that time period in Philly because, like, I think about so many artists, like you guys and like Ben Arnold and like just these, Jim Boja, like these guys who like just released incredible music during that time period. That's just kind of like it was like right there, but just didn't hit that next tier. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they both came close. I played music. I still play with Ben every now and then. I was in Jim's band and played on a lot of those records, and Ben's records too, like all throughout the '90s and into the early 2000s. And they're just both gifted songwriters and so hardworking. And they both had record deals that it's like, if the prize is here and your eye is on the prize, and you started here, like, the business end they got like right here. Yeah. And then anything can happen. Like, your A&R rep gets a job at another record company. And then your thing is passed down to somebody else, your contract, and then it's gone. Or in the case of us with Huffamoose, we were riding high, and like we were selling a lot of records every week. We just got like, this was in the same few day period. Like, our sales were going up and up. We kept getting radio station ads. Our A&R guy told us, like, you guys are playing Conan O'Brien on Friday. And we're like, wow. And then like 2 days later, he's like, "Hey guys, bad news. You're getting dropped from the label."
Jesus.
Because, the CEO of Seagram's wanted into the music business. So within a week, if you called the record label and talked to somebody there, it went from Interscope Records to Interscope Geffen A&M, but yeah, back to your point, like, those are 2 great examples of people that were so prominent in the scene. Well, Ben still is. Ben performs all the time. Jim has more of a career as a ukulele player now, because he's absolute virtuoso at it and does all this stuff in New York.
His Springsteen uke stuff still blows my mind. Like, it's
unbelievable,
so good, right?
I know. His Thunder Road is crazy.
It really is.
So yeah, there's so many bands, and it's the majority of bands that get signed. There was a statistic of something of like all these bands that get record deals, who it's only a small percentage of them that after they sign their record deal actually release a record. Because the way that, it's not the case anymore, but it was a cost benefit analysis to see like, okay, well, Interscope sunk X amount of dollars into your first 6 months, and you paid for the record, and then they're setting it up. But they'll spend $1 million on a band. Well, they did back then, and then drop you because of the the cost benefit analysis. It's because we're going to lose more money if we keep these guys on for a couple more records than we would if we just cut our losses right now. So it's like at the end of the day, you're a widget. You are a product that is like the humanity is stripped out of the equation, and it's like, you might as well be selling refrigerator magnets instead of, this band or this band's music.
It's wild. The so post all of that, did the Kevin Hanson Trio album, did that occur before the Fractals? You put the Fractals together?
Yeah, it was called Kevin Hanson Trio. We just did it right on the tails of the last Huffamoose record. Craig Elkins, the singer, moved back to Los Angeles, and I had a bunch of tunes that I was sitting on. So we just got into the studio right away and recorded that, and then a bunch of things happened where basically we changed the name because I was using my name to do other stuff, both as like a sideman, and if I wanted to do like solo stuff on the side. So that's how we went through a couple band names changes and then ended up being the Fractals, I think in 2006. Okay. But it's the same band.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Only now we have Mike Frank playing keyboards with us.
Color me surprised when I sat down to listen to the EP when it came out, and I was like, Bullseye, I know this song. How do I know this song? And then like as I was doing my research and I was going back, I was like, this is how I know this song.
Right. Well, we re-recorded it because we just wanted to give that song a second shot with better production. And I rewrote the lyrics on it, which I'm much happier with now. So yeah, that was one that was, the song's 25 years old, and we released it, kind of reinvented it a little bit.
Yeah, it's absolutely cool. The one of the other things I wanted to pick your brain about, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Rescue, is you mentioned your work as a sideman and stuff like that. It's shocking to people to know, I think, that you were in the Fade to Black concert tour for Jay-Z, and then also your connection with the Roots and whatnot, and the Chappelle Block Party and stuff like that. How did all that come about? Was that just the connection to the Roots that kind of led to that and Quest?
That's absolutely what it was. Yeah, it was the Roots. I was giving guitar lessons to this guy who's super cool, down at Blue Bond Guitars, and for a year, and he said, "Hey, Richard Nichols is coming down to see you." And I didn't really know who Richard Nichols was. He was the manager of the Roots and basically the center of this whole hip hop and R&B universe that was based in Philly. But it also included Mos Def and Common and like everything kind of touched the Roots. So the Roots were this epicenter of all things Philly hip hop, and through that, I started playing on a couple Roots songs, and that all happened really quickly too. So like after a few days, I realized that my job was just to go to the Roots studio every day, because and it was like it was so fun and creative, and the talent, like those guys, they're so talented and fun, and like Questlove's work ethic is insane. And so there was, they would just constantly be working on the new thing. So I would go in one day and then, I'm playing with Ninth Wonder, or I'm playing with Little Brother, or I'm playing with all these other cats. And then they just kept coming back. So then I kind of got to know a bunch of these different artists. And through that, like all these bands that came out of Philly, like all the guys in Jill Scott's band. I played in the Jazzy Fat Nasties, which was Richard's wife, Mercedes, was a singer in that. But there was just like a whole cast of musicians that would come through all the time. So I was lucky enough to get in with the Roots a little bit as a sideman, playing on the records. And then Richard, I was in the middle of a take, which happens a lot in those. There's so many people, like you'll be in the middle of a take and someone's like, did you get bacon on your sandwich? Like, and so I was playing a cut, and Richard said, "Hey, are you around on November 3rd?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you want to play Jay-Z's concert at Madison Square Garden?" I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds good." And it took a minute, like, wait a minute. What did you just say? So that happened, and that was insane. That whole experience was crazy. The concert itself at Madison Square Garden was bananas. And then kind of learning how to work, because that was kind of new for me. Then Questlove, it was like the consummate professional. He's like, "Look, these parts, nothing you play is going to be difficult. The hard part is going to be keeping track where you are in the show." So we had 26 songs to learn for the set. And then by the end of the concert, and changes were being made the day of the concert.
Oh,
it's like,
geez.
Ghostface Killah is going to come out and do a set. I did do a couple songs, and so the whole thing, it was just like, so there ended up being like 55 or 60 songs all of a sudden. And for me, like, getting my feet wet and like really paying attention to the MD it was a huge learning experience for me, and so much fun playing with those guys.
I can only imagine. Like, that's another one of those documentaries, because that whole like neo soul, that whole period in Philly. I spent so many nights at the 5 spot. Like, that was just like, that was my everything, and like, it was something so special. And I kind of knew it was special at the time, but like, It every time I think back more and more about that time period, like, it feels more and more special, and I can't even imagine like being a part of it. Like, that's just phenomenal.
Yeah, that whole thing was crazy. Well, Black Lily started in Old City, or Queen Village, like 3rd and whatever that club was, and then when they moved to the 5 spot, and it became like, oh, of course you're going to the 5 spot, because you're going to hear, you don't know who's going to show up.
Yeah.
And they would have the Strokes did a residency there for a month, and then you'd walk in and, like, I don't know, maybe Black Thought is going to perform. You know what I mean? And the whole thing was live, and God, it was fun, so much fun.
Yeah. During that time period, did you ever make your way to the OK Player message boards? Because that was another insane place to spend a lot of time.
The guy who ran that, Dan, I think, he was in the studio all the time. And so, like, OK Player became, it was just everywhere,
Yeah.
Always had it up and stuff. I wasn't really an active participant in that, but I was well aware of it.
That's good. That was actually through that. Like, I did a little bit of work with Quest when they started with the late night show, and then the transition to the Tonight Show. I was like a part of a small group of people who would make suggestions for walk-on music for the guests and stuff like that. And
oh, cool.
He paid me one year, so like,
nice.
Yeah, that's my little Questlove connection. And I always said I would love to have him on here to have a conversation, but our guy has an Oscar now, so I kind of think he's not going to make his way through the Zoom.
Just call him. Just call Questlove, which is funny because people say that to me now. I mean, I was like, the last real gig I did with Questlove was like more than 10 years ago, but people still call and say, "Hey, man, do you think you can get Quest to come play at my daughter's school?"
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Let me get Tom Cruise too.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny you say that, because some guy I know, I'm DJing this high school reunion for the high school I went to, but for a bunch of years before I graduated, and it's in November. And the guy found out about the podcast, and he goes, "Do you think you can call Eric Bazillion? And do you think the Hooters would play our graduation or our reunion?" And I was like, "Okay, first of all, I talked to him one time on this show. We're not friends. So I'm not going to call him. And second of all, I would never do that in my life. Like, hey, Eric, it was thank you for coming on the show last year. It was really great. Can you play this high school reunion that I'm DJing? Yeah,
no. I mean, it's funny. Like, Questlove is. He's the whole Kevin Bacon 60 degrees of separation. I think Quest is there like now, or it might be like 3 degrees of separation with him because he's just done so much, and so many actors and writers and politicians love Questlove. So he's like this. He is an entity.
Yeah. I used to think he was like our little secret, and I'm happy to see that everybody has learned this secret. You know what I mean? Because like he is without a doubt one of the most like incredible thinkers, specifically in music, but not just music. Like I don't know if you read, he did like a young adult book a year or two ago, and it was phenomenal. Like
I didn't read it. I know what you're talking about though.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Good dude.
Yeah. He's an amazing human being.
For sure. So, so the other thing with Rescue what was the last album before this that you put out was like 2019 maybe, something like that, or was that the Huffamoose?
The Huffamoose record came out in 2018, 2019, that reunion record. But the Fractals have been just releasing mostly singles.
Okay, yeah.
We put out a full length in 2010, and then we had an EP called Sakes Alive come out, and that was 2015. So this is the first like collection that we've put out, and a couple of these songs had been previously released, but for the sake of, because we were just going to release Rescue, and then it became, I think Maggie suggested, it's like, don't just release a single, like release some other stuff, which was the smartest thing we could have done. And so that's kind of become the new model. So we're going to release an EP. We'll probably still release singles, but the EP that we release next year is going to have all of this new material. And we've got a lot of songs that are already in the bank. They've already been mixed or in various states of completion. And then I've got a whole crop of new tunes that we'll be recording soon. So there's a road ahead.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. Here's one of the things about the EP I have to ask you. And now, hold on, I got to get in the mood for this. Hold on. I want you to rate my Christopher Walken impression. Okay. I want you to. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that to you. That's a basic one. Okay, I'll do it. So, do you remember Catch Me If You Can, the Leo movie where he plays the father, right? So, this is the only Walken I do, and it's the speech that he gives, which is, 2 mice fall into a vat of cream, and one, he drowns, he dies. The second mouse, he swam, and he swam, and he swam, until he turned that cream into butter, and he climbed out. I am that mouse. So, that's my... it's terrible. I do.
All right, good one. Yeah, we got another one.
Yeah. I love it. But so that song, like, not just playing on XPN. I think we've played. I DJ on Why Not. I think it's playing on Why Not. Oh. Are you surprised that's the draw on that album? Like the main or was that by design?
I really didn't know what to expect with that song because it's got a chorus that sounds like a rock song, but I had no idea what people would think of because the song. I'm gonna grab a guitar real quick. Like the verses of that song are really kind of it goes like this. Remember when you said. Which is a modal thing, almost like a Middle Eastern kind of sounding thing. And then it gets into the shooby dooby dang dang thing, which I just threw in for fun because I always wanted to write a song that had nonsense lyrics in it, like Banana Fana Fo Fama. And then the whole idea of this song was I just didn't know what people were going to think. I thought it was funny, and it was true because I knew all these people that we'd be at a party, and then they would do their Christopher Walken impersonation. And a lot of people do really, really good Walken impersonations, but a lot of people don't, that think that they do. Yeah. And so that that song was just based on, I forget, there was one incident that kind of just broke the camel's back, where I was at a party, and this one guy that always did his Walken, and it was bad. He did it again, and I was like, I have a song for you.
I'm getting it. Yeah.
But then Dan Reed at WXPN really liked the song, and so they started playing it. and you're lucky to get airplay for anything these days, but then they kept playing it, and then they kept playing it. So it was on all the time, and it was so thrilling to hear it. It's still always a thrill to hear your music on the radio. It is for me anyway. But to get a little bit of a lot of support from the station, and then support from fans too, is like extremely unexpected.
Yeah. You mentioned the show at 118 that just happened for the release. Or do you have a bunch of shows planned at all this summer, or?
We're booking some now. We're playing. We're doing a Fractals Unplugged show at Falzer on July 24th with our friends called Him for Her, and that was another band that was part of that Maniac scene in the late 90s called Maggie Pearson EJ.
Oh my God, yeah.
Remember them?
Yeah.
Well, now Maggie and Pierce have a band called Him for Her, HYMN for Her, and they're more of an acoustic thing. So we're gonna probably play. I'll be playing acoustic guitars. Jim's probably gonna play upright bass to accommodate that. So that's the next show that's on the books, and then I think we're doing the East Falls Festival in October, and we're trying to not oversaturate ourselves in Philly. So we're probably gonna be maybe 6 shows in the next year in this area. But like at this point, like kind of our model is to build a show around a new release.
Yeah.
Which for us is the most effective thing to do, because we get to hype it up and, try to get people to put their ears on the record, and it's just kind of more efficient that way.
Is there a physical release with the EP, or?
Oh yeah. That's you can. The CD's available.
Oh, very cool.
We pressed up this CD, the rescue release, and also I pressed up the physical copies of our last EP called Sakes Alive, so we can sell them at shows, and people are, I think this trend of people, buying vinyl has now kind of like slipped into people buying CDs again, which is great, because, you don't get money from Spotify unless you're Taylor Swift. So that trend is like, I'm definitely going to be printing everything up. There's going to be physical copies of everything.
It's good, kind of like or kind of getting at is that I think people miss like owning things. You know what I mean? Everybody who listens to this show knows that I've been on this two-year tear almost now of just trying to reconcile the fact that I don't think streaming is a good thing. And I just part of the issue isn't just the streamers too. It's listeners, because I think a lot of people just don't respect what they listen to on a stream, because it's just free, and if they don't like it, they'll just skip. Whereas when people actually make a purchase and actually care about something, they engage with it more and care about it more. But
I think you're exactly right. Like when you had a physical. Like for me, it was cassette tapes when I was a kid, because we would just spend all of our money on music, you form a relationship with the band more. I think if you put the cassette in, or you put a CD in there, chances are you're going to listen to the whole record,
Yeah.
Whereas Spotify, it's all on your phone, and its stuff is so disposable. If you don't like it, you're going to fast forward with it, and it also kind of. It afforded this really horrible opportunity and this was like maybe 6 or 7 years ago, when radio stations would take an artist's song and then digitally speed it up. So the lead vocal sounded, like chipmunks at first, but then they would just speed up the song without asking the artist.
Oh, Jesus.
So now a song that was 3.5 minutes long is under 3 minutes long, just to get more zeros and ones out there, to sell more advertising time. So I think streaming is definitely not the preferred. If you're a working musician and you're trying to make any money, I mean, really to make money on Spotify, you have to have so many spins, and so it's there's a lot of people I know now that are just saying, I'm not putting my stuff on Spotify at all, which I totally stand behind. And I've struggled with this. Is like, do we put stuff on Spotify because it screws artists? And it's like, well, if you don't, then who's the hell's gonna, do you have other goals that can only be met through Spotify airplay like me? Yes, I do. Because I want to have, just in full transparency, like more publishing opportunities. And so to make that stuff happen, you need exposure. You need other people to be able to hear your stuff right away, because people aren't driving to Tower Records anymore to pick up
That's right.
your CD,
Yeah. I think about one of the things I've been thinking about is like, I've been trying to, and I've been doing it with this podcast too, which is like, I've been, for the longest time I had this dream of world domination. I wanted everybody in the world to be able to hear me and stuff like that. Right. But now, now I'm starting to think like, I'd rather have like 10 really engaged people than 100 people who put my stuff on in the background like a scented candle. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. Yeah. And I totally relate to that, and like what, at the end of the day, what's a bigger compliment? Like, 5,000 people listening to your song that you don't know and you'll never know, or like one person coming up and saying, that song wiped me out. It gives me the chills and it reminds me of this, this, and this, and that's like, oh, right. That's why I do this.
That's why. Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. Like, I don't take compliments well, but I do appreciate when someone gives a little, like, I had someone tell me, oh, I listened to your interview with so-and-so or blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh, thanks, man. Thanks for checking that out. And then it's like, well, that part when you got them to say da, 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 da. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, this isn't just a compliment. Like, you actually engaged with it. You paid attention. You know what I mean? And that's the dream right there. So like, it's kind of just refocusing what I want. Right. And finding satisfaction in what I got, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is another cliche thing, but it's so true to make, especially now in our digital realm, it's like to make a human interaction with someone through the efforts of something that you love to do. That's a really heavy compliment.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. At this time, you want to go through the Jawntlet? These are my questions that I close every interview with. It starts with the one-hit wonders. This is a one-hit wonder in the name of the segment only. You're just picking a favorite. First one, Billy Joel or Elton John? Who do you prefer?
Elton John.
Yeah? Okay. Debbie Harry or Joan Jett?
Debbie Harry.
Okay. Aretha Franklin or Tina Turner?
Aretha.
Okay. Nirvana or Pearl Jam?
I really love both those bands. If I had to go with, man, that's a tough one. Am I going to get hate mail?
No, there's no wrong answers.
Okay. Toss up.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I always like to tell people, like, hey, you're picking one of the best things ever and one of the other best things ever. So I don't think you can go wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Janis Joplin or Stevie Nicks?
That's another tough one. I mean, I love Janis. I know her story and I identify with it. But if I had to be completely honest, I've probably taken away more from Stevie Nicks as a writer. I mean, Janis Joplin wasn't so much a songwriter as she was this, rebellious rock and roll personality who could sing her ass off. But Stevie Nicks, like, some of her songwriting is ridiculous to me.
Yeah. I just had this conversation with someone the other day, but I was like, can you imagine having written Silver Springs and then just like, hey, we're going to make that a B-side and it's not going to make the album. You know what I mean? Like, get out of here.
Yeah. I also heard that she learned how to play guitar and the first song that she wrote on guitar was Landslide.
Jesus Christ.
First one. Hey, what do you think of this? Hey, you're getting the hang of this.
Yeah, right. First song I wrote was a song called Chicken Cutlets, and it was about saying I love you with a boneless chicken breast. So like, Landslide, Chicken Cutlets. I get it. Your first songs are always your best.
Exactly right.
Beatles or the Stones?
Again, that's going to file under my category of what have I taken more from, which would definitely be the Beatles. I mean, there's more to take from with the Beatles, and plus, is it a Paul song or is it a John song? And I've dived pretty deeply into their music,
Yeah. The final one of the one-hit wonders, Bohemian Rhapsody or Stairway to Heaven?
Oh God. Definitely Bohemian Rhapsody. I guess, I was involved heavily in the Led Zeppelin Stairway to Heaven lawsuit. So
Really?
I was the musical expert witness for the plaintiff in that lawsuit.
Holy shit.
And even though I can say Zeppelin is, top 5 influences and I love them forever. So the Stairway to Heaven, it's hard for me to listen to that song anymore because I had to, I spent 2 years of my life like getting so inside that song. Every facet of the arrangement, every instrument, I had to provide forensics about how to play it compared to the other song that was in contention. So Bohemian Rhapsody over Stairway to Heaven.
That's insane. I had no idea. That's absolutely insane. Those kind of arguments are always really interesting to me. Like kind of felt like that one was a little cut and dry, to be honest, just personally. But like when I look at like the Marvin Gaye, Robin Thicke, Pharrell thing, when like that one. That gets a little weird to me. Like I get the essence and it is there. Like you blend the two of those songs together. I get it. But like it's different. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah. I have spent a lot of time. I wrote this research paper over the past couple of years about about frivolous copyright infringement. And a lot of it was based on my experience in it because I do think like in that case that was an absolutely frivolous lawsuit, the Robin Thicke lawsuit. And that was one of the songs I used in my examples, like proving how, it's the lawsuits, copyright infringement lawsuits they're kind of absurd on their face, the way that they're determined, because like in the Zeppelin trial, in the Stairway to Heaven trial, like I had to sit and play guitar in front of Jimmy Page and Robert Plant that were sitting right here, which was surreal. But then I looked over at the jury. One of these cats was asleep with his head back on the wall, and this woman was like listening to. She snuck like an earpiece in her. Like this is from that Matthew Broderick movie. She was listening to shit on her iPad.
Oh my god!
And I'm like, wait a minute. These people are supposed to be able to make decisions about these, music theory concepts or like highly technical guitar arguments. Like, forget it. Like,
yeah,
that shouldn't take place, So that's like strike one against the copyright infringement laws. And now they're just like, I don't know if you know this, but record companies, there's teams now of lawyers that proactively, like if you're a new songwriter, you buy insurance, you buy copyright lawsuit insurance in case somebody goes to get your song. Because now the record companies, the big ones, especially like, all right, they just bought Bruce Springsteen's catalog. Now somebody's looking out to see if you wrote anything that sounds like it came from Born to Run. And if it does, it's not Bruce's decision anymore because he doesn't. Right. He doesn't control the copyright anymore. So, yeah, that's a whole... I'm probably talking too much on your show about this. I'm sorry.
No. It's amazing. Like, and it's just gross to me. Like, it really is. Like, there are blatant things out there, but like, is it pulling from the ether? Like, I don't know, man. Like, it just gets... It gets really muddied. And I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions.
Yeah. There's a really, really well-articulated and researched... lawsuit by a guy named Adam Neely who does a ton of YouTube videos. And if you look it up, what's the song? It was the title of the song escapes me, but it was Dua Lipa was sued by this reggae band called Tactical Arctic something Artifact. Anyway. Because the song they sound identical, but then Adam Neely in this interview shows me that this song that claimed they were ripped off by this song, well, there's another song that sounds exactly like it that came out 10 years earlier by Michael Jackson. And then there's another song that came out 20 years before that has the same tempo, the same groove, the same chords, and similarities in the shape of the melody. So it's like you
Yeah.
claiming originality, is really hard to do
Yeah.
because if you work hard enough, you can convince anybody that you have to prove similarity and you have to prove exposure. Like people had to have access to the song. So, and those are they're extremely easy to prove those things. Because I could say to you, and there's like in the George Harrison lawsuit, he lost because of subconscious copyright infringement. They said, well, you must have heard My Sweet Lord. It was a big hit when he did He's So Fine, the Shirelles.
Right, yeah.
And he was like, I never really spent time listening to this song. And they're like, oh, really? Because it was the number one hit when you were, 17. He's like, okay, fine, I heard the song. They're like, see? So, if there's similarity and you can prove access to it, then, okay, let the lawsuit proceed.
Yeah, it's
insane. And I'm saying this as somebody who lost one of the biggest copyright infringement lawsuits of all time, And so, like, looking at it, I've seen it from both ends, and it gets really ugly really fast.
That's crazy. That's crazy. The second half of this is the top 10 countdown. In this, I use Jawn, as we all do, to be whatever you want. Doesn't have to be music, can be anything you want. So the first one is, first, Jawn, what was the first thing you were obsessed with when you were a kid?
Well, it was definitely music. I was just so fascinated by it. The early records, and this will probably qualify for a few of these. Stevie Wonder songs in the Key of Life. Had such a profound impact on me, because my parents played it all the time, and that was just like Stevie's voice to me is just like a conduit to heaven. So that was probably my first obsession.
Yeah. Songs in the Key of Life and Nielsen Schmielsen were like the two albums that molded me and my childhood.
That's another one. We had that record too.
It's incredible. And I love all of Harry's stuff, but there's something in that album that from start to finish, he was dialed in and just nailed it.
Totally. Did you see that documentary?
Yeah.
That was released the last couple of years. Yeah. It was so good.
He's another one who I want more people to pay attention to. I feel like he's completely unsung, even though he's everywhere in the zeitgeist. You know what I mean? It's wild.
Yeah.
I was just talking to someone the other day. That Popeye soundtrack has no reason to be as good as it is, and yet there it is. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Number two, what's your current, Jawn? What are you into right now?
I am enjoying watching Poker Face with my daughter. I love that show. Music I've been listening to I listen to a lot of classical music and a lot of jazz still. The jazz record that I've loved is by Trio Grande. Will Vinson is a sax player, killer guitar. Killer band, and the guitarist in there is named Gilad Hexelman. Other music like that, probably for the last 15 years, I've been obsessed with Brad Mehldau, the piano player. So I listen to Brad Mehldau all the time. I listen to a lot of Ravel lately. I've got my favorites. Any new stuff that's come out, in the past few years, I really fell in love with a couple records of Deerhoof.
Oh, yeah.
And come on, Brain. The Australian band. Wow, this is embarrassing because I just played this yesterday. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, they're fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
So creative.
That's awesome. The one of the things that I was just going to say there, damn it, now my brain just did it. You know what I've been really into recently is Current Jawn. It's right there. It's right in front of your face, Nate. They re-released this album, Motorcycle by Lottie Golden. It came out in '69. All right, she's but she was like a songwriter, and they signed her to Arista, and she put this album out, and it's a fucking head trip. You should definitely check it out. It's I think I read somewhere that they kind of credited as being the first female rock concept album.
Really?
But it's all about her time in New York and her friends in the Lower East Side. It's like, this is how I've been selling it to people. It's like the Velvet Underground meets the Shirelles. It's absolutely
Really?
insane. Yeah,
Oh wow. Well, I'm gonna get that.
Lottie Golden, check that out.
Okay.
I will shout that one from the rooftops. Number 3, what was your first concert? What was the first live show you saw?
Well, there were two. In the same year, I saw Pat Metheny, the Travels tour in my hometown. And then later, as a family, we went to see, I was 10, we went to see Hall & Oates at the Spokane Coliseum. And that was it was a killer concert for me because we knew all the music and stuff.
Yeah. That's another one. Those first 3 Hall & Oates albums, I feel like, are completely undersung and overshadowed by that 80s output. But like those first 3 songs, they were just untouchable to me, like as songwriters.
So soulful.
Yeah, for sure. Number 4, what was your last live show you saw?
I see a lot of shows, but the last one that really knocked me out was it last fall? It was Shakti with John McLaughlin at the Keswick Theater.
Oh, nice.
So it was one of Zakir Hussein's last concerts, and it was like, it was definitely a heavy, emotional, dare I say, spiritual experience. And the energy in the room was just insane. And the music is fascinating, and the rhythms. I'm such a sucker for getting inside of rhythms and complex rhythms like that. So that one just knocked me out.
That's an awesome answer. Number 5, what was your favorite concert? Best live show you ever saw?
One of the best live shows I've ever seen was Beck in like 99 or something down at, I think it was at the Spectrum. And it was like as he was on his ascent, and he just like, it was all cylinders revving. It was unbelievable. So that was one of them. They're more like sets because I've seen so many concerts where, I was part of, like, I was on the side stage, I saw Cheap Trick play a set after we played at Camden. Like, we played the outdoor stage, and then we went in and saw Cheap Trick, and it was like, I had to say it, like, because every song they play is a hit, and they are like Robin Sanders, an incredible frontman, and like fun and gracious. Same thing. I saw Foreigner when we were on tour at what's the huge festival in Milwaukee, Summerfest.
So yeah,
we saw Foreigner, and we kind of went as like a joke. And these guys, it was like, you got to be shitting me! Like it was, it was just insane. The energy and the fun, and like seeing people's reactions. So yeah, Shakti and Foreigner.
I love it. That's a good wide range there. Number 6, who you never seen live that you wish you could have? They can be living or dead.
I mean, I would have loved to have seen John Coltrane perform.
Ooh, God.
And also, like, I never saw Bowie, who's one of my biggest influences and favorite artists. So those are 2. I would have loved to have seen Sly and the Family Stone.
Oh, that bums me out. I just heard about that.
R.I.P. Sly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, those are a handful of them. Cannonball Adderley. There's so many. Like, I was such a jazz bow in my formative years that, there's musicians who I spent so much time transcribing and learning their stuff that I wish I had seen. Bill Evans, Charles Mingus.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
I think Dan Reed had one of the better answers for this question that caught me off guard because he got really specific. Like he was like, I would have liked to have seen Thelonious Monk in like a New York cafe. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. I was like, don't get so hyper specific, but yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, it's just like my side answer to this. My main answer is always Prince. I never saw Prince live. And my parents actually bought me a ticket to go with them during the Purple Rain tour, but then heard about the stage antics and sold my ticket off because they didn't want to, like, because I was too young.
Oh,
I
no.
Know. Yeah, for sure.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Sucks.
But my second answer to that is hyper specific, and it is I don't know if you were around or whatnot, but Jeff Buckley played at the Grape Room one night.
I missed that show. I heard about it, but I saw him the next year at the Truck.
Oh, it's absolutely insane. I couldn't imagine like what that would have sounded like. Like that's.
It was, oh, well, that was one of the, I mean, you could rank that in like top 5 concerts because he was at the, I think it was maybe 6 or 8 months before he passed, around that. And everybody in that, like the truck, imagine the truck where you could hear a pin drop at the truck. Yeah. And the energy, and he was just, I mean, he was transcendent. The shit he was doing vocally, and the band was tuned in, man. People were bawling their heads off. Other people, like this guy I went to, one of the people, we went with like 10 people. This guy was sitting there like he was a zombie, It was really intense. Jeff Buckley.
Oh God, my 2 idols musically, and they not really, they don't really go together. You wouldn't think, but is Jeff Buckley and G Love, and there's a YouTube video out there of the 2 of them jamming together, and yeah, and like the day that I found that, I was just like, okay, maybe I'm not insane. Maybe, maybe you know what I mean? Like maybe it did make sense that these are my 2 faves.
No, totally, man.
Yeah, that's wild.
I love G Love too. I mean, he was getting his star ascended so quickly because we did a little like when Huffamoose was just like playing like on the front steps of a record store or at, he was just planning his seats, but he went from like 0 to 60 in like 1 second. And
it's crazy. It's crazy. Good dude. Number 7, name an unappreciated Jawn, something you wish more people appreciated.
Okay. And this gets a little inside, but there's these 2 Brazilian classical guitarists named the Assad brothers. And their performances are they're unbelievable guitar players, and they play with such fire. So that would be one like in that realm. It's kind of weird for me to answer that because my musical tastes are so divergent. So I could name like 25 jazz artists that I wish people knew. One guy who's singing I really love was John Martin, who's a Scottish folk singer, a contemporary of Nick Drake. And when Huffamoose was first getting together, we did a tour of the Northeast. We did New York and Boston and Philly. And this guy's singing was just unbelievable. So I think he's somebody that I wish more people knew about.
Awesome. Great answer. Number 8, what's your favorite album?
If I had to pick one album, it would be Songs in the Key of Life.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's just perfect. Perfect. Like, there's no reason a double album should be perfect, but there it is. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Beginning to end. Yeah.
Yeah. Number 9, name an artist whose output you'll consume anything they release.
Of like a contemporary artist, I will buy anything that, go the other direction. I will buy anything that Laura Marling releases.
Oh, good answer. Real good answer.
I would buy anything that King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard releases. I would listen to anything that the Roots release for various reasons. But I think Black Thought, speaking of underrated, like Black Thought is, I think, even though he's achieved such a level of success, like his credibility as a rapper, I think, is overlooked sometimes.
Yeah. And his versatility too. Like he can literally sit with anybody. Like it's insane. And outdo them on their own songs. Like he's just an absolute incredible artist like that. Like it's really wild. Kind of talking classical and stuff. Were you around at all during there was I'm pretty sure he only did it for one show. But Quest put together a show, I want to say it was at the Kimmel Center. It was called Philly Paris Lockdown, but it was like he reworked some old classical stuff. from Paris, but kind of put contemporary feel on it. It's up on, I'm pretty sure it's up on the NPR site because I think WXPN did a thing with it. But it's one of those things, one of the many things that if I ever get a chance to talk to him, I want to find out how like we get that released, because it was I was at the show and it was magical.
Where was the show?
I want to say the Kimmel Center. But yeah, it was just a one night thing. And it was absolutely incredible. Like absolutely incredible.
With who did he perform? Do you remember?
That's a good question. I remember there was a vocalist. Her name was Karen Ann. She was there, but I can't remember who the players were on it. But it was
totally cool.
It was really something special. Like I have a link to the NPR link. I'll send it to Maggie. I'll have her send it to you.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
It's cool. Number 10, the 10th and final of the top 10 countdown. What's your favorite Jawn of all time? Can be anything you want it to be.
My favorite Jawn of all time was the tingle I felt on my spine when I got really into meditation and as a young college student.
Yeah.
But
do you still meditate?
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't as much. But I remember being, I touched God. So that was something that was. I think about it often. But my favorite Jawn of all time is a party, a great party with family and friends and music and performing. Playing. That would have to be it. I've got 2 daughters, and getting able to see them with my family who's all out west, and bring back that spirit of, this is what this shit is all about. Where there's great music and there's food and there's just laughter and that's what it's all about to me. If I had to pick one thing, that's it.
Beautiful answer. Beautiful answer. So Rescue is out now. You said there are physical copies available. You got the show coming up at the Fallser. What was the date on that?
July 24th.
Okay, July 24th. If anybody wants to track you down on the socials, do you do the what are the best way to catch you?
We've got the Fractals band. Our website to see get the CDs and stuff is thefractalsband.com. We're on Instagram. Also, I think it's just the Fractals. The thing is, there's several bands called the Fractals, and I think we might outlive the one that's the next, that's the closest to us in terms of. No offense to those guys. I don't know how old you are. You look older than I do. And by outlive, I don't mean they're going to die. I mean the band's longevity.
The band, sure.
Yeah. But yeah, we're on all the socials and stuff, and we're trying to. We unfortunately we had a decent following on Facebook and Instagram, and then my Facebook account, my personal account, got attacked, and the band account was associated with that, and Meta, anything happens, the whole thing comes on. So we just had to rebuild a new page. So we're doing that, and we're going to start posting more live stuff, snippets on thefractalsband.com.
Two things, quick hits here. Speaking of the socials, I saw a social video of you and Dave Manley, which is just a mind-blowing thing to me. I would have loved to have seen that. Do you guys play together, or was that just a one-time thing?
Dave was one of my first friends in Philly. He's my soul brother. Because he moved from Detroit at the same exact time I moved from out west. And we both worked at Tower Records. And I was talking to this guy, you can kind of, if you've been playing music for a long time, you kind of get a sense of how somebody plays by talking to them for 30 seconds.
Makes sense.
And this guy was I could just tell, he was a serious guitar player. And then we played together. We played together in all sorts of stuff. We would play duo gigs together. We played in bands, and then he got the gig with Jill. First he got the gig with Music Soul Child, and then he played with Jill, so he was in that direction while I was doing all the Huffamoose stuff. But I texted Dave this morning, I never get to see him anymore. But I was in DC last summer. I called him up. My cousin was getting married, and he's like, hey, what's up, dude? We come to my gig. I start at 6, and I'm like, okay, bye. So I played with him. Like Dave's my brother, man. I love that.
That's
guy.
awesome. I remember at the Grape Room, I think was the first time I saw him. Was Philosophic? Was that the name of the group that he had for a little bit of time?
That's right.
Uh-huh.
Damn, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, Dave's one of the baddest out there. Killer
Definitely.
guitar player, wonderful guy, funny as hell.
And then the other thing was, is the documentary available anywhere? The Huffamoose documentary?
There are physical copies of it, and I can get you one.
I would love that.
But there was supposed to be. I still don't have a definitive answer on, because people for 20 years have been saying, "Why is this on Netflix? Can I stream this?" And it should be, but there was some legal thing or something. But if you want a copy, I know a guy.
Oh God, I would love that. I would love that, because also I'm a big fan of Cameron Crowe, and if Cameron Crowe calls it one of the best rock movies ever, well then that's high praise, my friend.
Yeah. Yes.
I dig it.
Yep.
I dig it. Kevin, thank you so much for doing this, and thanks for all of the music and the beautiful conversation today. It means the world to me. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Nate. It's great talking to you.
My many thanks again to Kevin for joining me on the show today. Rescue, the new EP by the Fractals, is out now on all streaming providers and is available on CD for purchase on their website at thefractalsband.com. You can catch the Fractals Unplugged alongside him and her at the Falzer Club on July 25th. Tickets are also available on their website. Links to all of those are, of course, as always, in the show notes. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast wherever you get your podcasts from, and gang, it is never too late to get yourself a super awesome Jawn Scout Merit Badge for Citizenship of the World just by rating and reviewing us. Don't forget to visit www.yothat'smyjawn.com for the link tree with links to articles, merchandise, all of the previous episodes of this podcast, guest appearances on other podcasts, and more. And while you are there, please be sure to sign up for our mailing list to get all of the updates delivered straight into your inbox. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/YoThat'sMyJawn for updates and live stream. Follow us on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack at Yo That's My Jawn, and search Yo That's My Jawn on YouTube to find the Yo That's My Jawn YouTube channel. Like and subscribe the heck out of that ish. We want to hear from you. Reach out and touch some Jawn. I thank you for your patience while I took a break and got my head right. I appreciate y'all. And guys, I missed you. I got some fun stuff lined up, so keep an eye out for all of that. Blue skies! Until next time, everybody!
That's my Jawn!
Displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. You taste things that don't need to be measured. Yo, That's My Jawn is a Lonely Monk production. Written and produced by yours truly, Nate Runkle. Theme song by me, under the moniker Nate 3.0. Special thanks to Fox Run Brands, DX Ferris, Andrew Scott, Maggie Poulos, Dan Drago, Natalie Runkle, and the beautifully vibrant and wickedly stunning Katie Dovney. If you or anyone you know has any ideas they would like to share or any guests they would like to hear on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to us at yothat'smyjawn@gmail.com or hit us up on the socials at Yo That's My Jawn. Until next time, be sure to displace the guilt and embrace the pleasure. Tilt your head back and shout to the world, Yo, that's my Jawn.